You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm your host Maureen, and you'll notice I'm absent a partner today. I think I want to put her right here because this is where she usually is on my Zoom screen. So Janice is unavailable this week. She has got some other obligations, so we are doing it solo this week. And because she's become sort of my right-hand man, I can't discuss any of the characters or character arcs or relationships or even ironies and parallels without her. I need Janice to do that, and I still have a bit of chemo brain, so I need that jump start to remind me of what I think or what I want to talk about. So I know you've seen us do character spotlights so far, and you've seen us do recaps of season 2, and so we're still going to keep trucking in on those. We have a lot of new characters we have to discuss with you. However, what we are going to be doing today is we are going to be getting to some of our YouTube comments because I have not been able to reach you online. I haven't been able to respond to you online. I'm going to do it right now on air. So we're going to start with our first episode and kind of go through some of these comments. Obviously, I'm not going to read the ones that are rude or offensive or are just spammy. I'm not going to read any of those. But I'm going to read some relevant ones that I have not responded to yet. And we're going to go through this bit by bit. If we have some time afterwards, I'm going to kind of go into my opinion on how I feel about season 2 versus season 1. And it's also something I want to reserve for Janice if I can. So I'm only going to discuss that. This episode ends up being like maybe 20 minutes. So we'll see how it goes. So we're going to start with the Sanditon Chronicles Season 2, Episode 1, recap. Some comments on there. We've got Mystical Margaret. And some of these are new. I mean, people are commenting on these every day. So even though they may be old episodes, people are still commenting on them. So Mystical Margaret says, the girls going to the soldiers' camp was very reckless. For a female to be labeled a camp follower in that era is similar to being labeled a putrid sound deb in the film An Officer and a Gentleman. I've never seen that movie. Don't come at me. Only a certain kind of girl or woman would follow military men around, doing anything and everything to get a husband, usually with little success. In the Regency or Georgian era, the girls could have taken a hit to their reputation if it had gotten around town that they visited the soldiers' camp twice. It was troubling to me that such well-brought-up ladies would know this, but still took the risk. I agree. I think that was something that we covered in the episode. I don't know if we covered it in depth, but it was definitely something that we hit on in the episode, something that we felt was weird, that felt out of place, especially for Georgia or for Charlotte to bring her sister. Yes, it was Georgiana's idea to go, and she was just, trying to be spunky, trying to be her own individual person. But that is more of a modern day thing. I don't think that would have been done then. I know that sometimes rules are more lax in the Regency era. I know that rules were more lax in the country than they were in the city. But in terms of propriety, basic rules still applied to the best of my knowledge. Now, I am not a historian. I love history. I minored in history. I did not major in history in college. I just minored in history. And most of my Regency knowledge comes from Jane Austen or other novels written in that area. So I could very well be wrong, but that is my perception of the Regency era from the things that I've read and the things that I have studied, is that the rules were more lax in the country than in the city, or than in, society, like in London or, something like that, something like Bath. Rules were more lax. However, propriety remained the same throughout. You couldn't, if you were alone with a man anywhere, that was scandalous. If you went into a bar where all men were and it was just you or you and your sister, it would be scandalous. You would both be ruined, that sort of thing. And I do think that going into the soldiers' camp, I feel like going into a soldiers' camp in general, for a female, you wouldn't have been let in, is what I feel like would have happened. Just because, the men were, they liked the women, but they would go out to town and they were able to mingle with them in that way. I don't think they would have been let into the camp. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, and I very well could be wrong. It just doesn't feel like something that would be done, especially if I suppose Lennox is not really an upstanding, at least not in my view, he's not really an upstanding captain or Colonel Lennox. He's not upstanding in that way. Maybe he's not beholden to the bounds of propriety, clearly, since he slept with another man's wife. So, I don't know. I agree with you, though. That scene felt very, very off. It felt very... It felt like it was simply a tool to get from point A to point B in the story. And maybe that's what it was. I feel like that's what it was. I think that's what it was. But I think there were more creative ways that felt fitting to the time frame time period and fitting to the piece that could have been done, in my opinion. And I don't like to say anything bad about the show because there's very little to say bad about it, in my opinion. Kathleen Louise, in the same video, says, why did Sydney have to die? Well, Sydney had to die because if he did not die, we would have continued to be upset that Charlotte and Sydney weren't together. We would have continued to hold out hope for Charlotte and Sydney to be together. And we would have never been happy with any of Charlotte's happiness because we would have been of the state of mind that, well, nope, Sydney is still alive. He's out there somewhere. Charlotte should go get him. Charlotte should go find him. And that's just not feasible. That's just not going to work. The actor is not coming back to the series. The actor has no desire to come back. He has no inclination to come back, no plans to come back at all. Zero. Zip. So they had to deal with the character. And I think that the team did a service to the Sanditon fandom by killing Sydney off. It was a mercy to us, I think. And really, they were kind of in a damned if we do, damned if we don't situation here. I mean, if they killed him off, they upset a whole bunch of people who want him to live. And, well, he didn't have to die, but if they let him live, then they would have made a whole body of people in the fandom upset because, well, he's alive, he should be with Charlotte. So they were in a rock and a hard place, and they did the best that they could for us as fans. They did the best service to us they could. And I really do think that having him die was the only option. And we talked about that in our season 1 of the Sanditon Chronicles, about how that seemed to be the only option. It really, really did seem to be the only way that could work for everybody. And I think it needed to happen for Georgiana's growth. I think it needed to happen for Tom's growth. I think it needed to happen for Arthur's growth. And I think it needed to happen for Charlotte's growth. Of course, if Sydney was still in the show like they had originally hoped, they could have still done growth that way. But in the arc of the show, especially when we see season 2, how it impacted them, we see them get there faster and in a way that marks them a little deeper, I think. So I think it was necessary to answer that question. Chris Askew, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, says, agree about Sydney's portrait, but looks like it depicts him at a much younger age, perhaps about the age Eliza rejected him. I think you're right. I think it is around that time period. I still think it looks way too different. But I think that they probably did the painting prior to hiring an actor. And I think maybe you could excuse it away as maybe it was done by a subpar artist before his time, or maybe Arthur did it. Maybe it was a family portrait that a family member did of him just as they were doodling. It was just something special they put up. There's a lot of reasons why it could look so different. I do think it doesn't look like Theo James at all. But there could be a lot of different reasons for that they just don't explain. I think that kind of makes shows more intriguing when you see these background pieces and you see these background stories that nothing's spoken about them, but they tell their own tale just by being there, by being this piece that's observed. And in this case, it's a highlighted piece that's never really talked about beyond that Sydney. So I think the team knows, the writing team, the cast team, the props team, the crew, I think they all know that it doesn't look like Theo James. It's similar enough that it's passable, but I think they're all aware it doesn't look like him, and I think that there's a lot of reasons why it could be that way. Denise Sayer says, the dialogue choice for Charlotte to say that she can't put herself in a man's power is the reflection of Sydney saying to Charlotte that he had never wanted to put himself in another person's power before, implying that he was in Charlotte's power. So in many ways, Charlotte is at the same point in her emotional journey that Sydney was at when she met him. I think that could be true. However, I think that's an excellent point. But I think that Sydney was so much more hardened by the time Charlotte met him. Charlotte is not hardened. Charlotte is trying to protect herself, and she's in the very beginning stages of that. So I don't think she's as hardened as he was. I don't think she's as firm in that as he was. I think that she is just saying that out of her immediate grief that she's experiencing, because 1, Sydney's not with her, but 2, Sydney's dead. So I think that her saying that is more out of a place of the very fresh and new pain that she's feeling, rather than a firmness to that idea, whereas I think Sydney was very, very firm in that of never again. And Charlotte was the only one to break him down, and she broke him down because she loved so completely and so really. So I think that could be correct. I think that their emotional states are a little bit different in that, if that makes sense. All right, so let's go to there's more comments on there, but I'm just reading the ones that it pulls up. So let's go to season 2, episode 2 recap. We got 2 we're going to talk about from the same person, actually. Gretchen Wagenseller, or I hope I said that right, says, Captain Carter is also there for dry comic relief. His comments, Handel, he's not a poet, Cowper, his favorite, he died 20 years prior, paraphrased, asked of Frasier, how did poetry help you on the battlefield? Best his boast about saving many men from drowning at Bidassoa battle, 1813, 7 years prior, and then taking her out onto a not very stable boat to propose. He can't swim, and he loses one of his paddles trying to save Allison after she falls in and can barely make it back to shore. I agree. I think Carter was there for comic relief. I think it was more than that. I think it was to teach Allison a lesson, though. I think part of it was comic relief, but I think Frasier was funnier than Carter. I think that Frasier had the wit. I think that Frasier had the, he was, I don't want to say more intelligent, that feels mean, but Frasier he had more of a sense of certainty about them that made his wit and his humor, it came alive a little bit more. And when he was funny, it was because it was intelligent humor. When Carter was funny, it was accidental. It was, you're laughing at him. You're not laughing because of him. You're not laughing because he was funny. You're laughing at him. And I think that he thought he was very sneaky. I think he felt he was so overwhelmed with the idea of love. He was in love with love. He was in love with the idea of love, rather. And so for him and Allison, he was necessary to push Allison where she needed to go to realize what truth was and to realize what real love was. So I think he was, more than being the source of comic relief or dry comic relief, I think Carter was a vehicle to push Allison to where she needed to go. And in the process, I think he also taught Charlotte something by his actions. And I think it made Charlotte evaluate things a little bit differently. And I think that could be obviously debated, but I think that watching her sister go through that and find that lacking, I think Charlotte already knew that he was not being honest and truthful. As we see at the garden party, obviously she was made aware of it. However, I think that watching her sister go through this and give herself over wholeheartedly made her more cautious in that moment. It made her say, okay, wait, am I moving too fast? Am I going too fast? And I think she would have given herself over to Colburn, but I think that watching that play out helped her to stay firm when he returned for her in the house. There is going to be a lot of people in the comment section who are going to come at me for this, and that's okay. I would love to hear what you think about that. I really would. But I think our writers for this show do a really good job of intertwining all of these storylines in a way that they make sense and they make each other's storylines move further down the pike. I think they do a really good job of that. Gretchen also says the wager was for a week, not a month. I don't know why I thought it was a month. And I'm going to tell you my dirty little secret, okay? Again, don't come at me, but I have not rewatched season 2 yet. When season 2 was out, I was in the throes of chemo every week. I had just started chemo every week, and I was just so tired that it took everything in me to even watch one episode every week. Not because it wasn't good, but it was any show, and Sanditon was the show that I chose to watch, and I also had to watch shows from my other podcast that I watched. So after that, I was sick for a bit, and then I had to go for a mastectomy, and then I was just sick all over again, over and over and over again. So I have not rewatched season 2, and that is definitely on my list to do. I'm trying to catch up on a lot of things, so when I go through again, I'll watch it. But I don't know, it was stuck in my head that it was a month. I don't know why. But Gretchen, you are not the only person to call me out on that. Everybody came out of the woodwork on that one. Everybody did. Let's go to our episode. And I only read 2 comments from that, but there are 11. For some reason, when you pull them up in your YouTube studio, it doesn't bring up all of them. I don't know how to make them all come up. So if you guys know how to do that, I mean, I can go to the video and look at them, but I'm not doing that. So let me know if there's an easier way to do this. All right. So on the season 2, episode 3 recap, Lily France says 2 things. 1, the look on Lenora's face when Colburn gives Charlotte the flowers. Yeah. And 2 says, I think it's interesting for both seasons, that despite how desperate the Parkers are for money, they did not take advantage of their relationship with Georgiana. Now, and Lily just commented on this yesterday. So one, the look on Leonora's face, yes, I agree. And it's something that can be so overlooked. And that's what I mean about these background things that are either telling their own story or furthering the story. And this is how they intertwine it, because your eyes are drawn to Charlotte and Colburn, right? Because they're the two, she's the heroine of the story and he's the love interest, right? So your eyes are drawn to them and what's happening between them. And you're drawn to the story that's being told between them, that sweetness and that growth. And just the way that it's playing out, you're drawn to watch them. But there's these other two characters that are right there that are just as vitally important as those two, that if we're not careful, we forget about it. And I actually, now when I play the scene back in my mind, I can see the look on Leonora's face. And it's shock, right? Am I remembering that right? It's shock. But it's like a happy shock. It's almost like her mouth is open and there's like a little smile. She's just watching this exchange with awe that her father has never been this sentimental. Her father has never been this sensitive or this sweet. And she's watching Charlotte bring this out in him. So you can imagine that only watching her do this, and watching Charlotte do this, and watching her father do this for the first time ever, how much more painful it had to have been to have lost Charlotte. Because Charlotte was she had Augusta, and when she hugged Augusta, she said, it's like hugging my mother, but really Charlotte is the one who acted like her mother from the standpoint of wife to her father, and caring for her, right? So seeing what Charlotte did the whole household had to make it even more painful for her, Leonora. Mystical Margaret says on here, Charlotte the horse whisperer slowly tames or wins over the trust of the master of the house and his wayward niece and daughter. Absolutely. Charlotte, I like that every season they kind of bring up this new aspect of her character, and you kind of know that she should have that ability because she's a country girl, right? Her father owns a farm, so she probably has horses, and it's, that sort of thing. She's been around those animals. They don't shock or surprise her at all. But it's this new thing. Even with the dog, she made friends with the dog. And it's not really something that we saw in the first season. So I think that it's interesting to watch them pull out these little character traits in her still. They're still surprising us with some of these. Gretchen says on here again, Bidassoa likely 1813, which is 7 years prior. She is giving us the date of that. And Mystical Margaret replies, so Carter likely was no more than 12 or 13 during that battle. I didn't do the math on that, but you're absolutely right. He would be 12 or 13. He would have been a man of valor in that battle if he fought in that. So many awards and medals and gotten somebody fired for sure. Chris Iceque says, thinking the portrait of Sidney was of him at a much younger age, and we've already discussed that. Yes, I do agree with that. I just think that it's too different. Louisa Levinson, she is someone who is frequently on our YouTube page, so commenting, and I'm sorry, Louisa, that I don't respond to you. I don't respond to a lot of these comments enough. I think I was before I really got into chemo. I was trying to respond to them, and I just haven't been able to since, so I'm really sorry about that. But Louisa says, the first episode, I wonder why there was blood on the sheets if Sidney died from fever. And I think someone in the comments answered that. She said, it was Mystical Margaret. She said, yes, I looked it up, and unfortunately one of the horrible side effects of advanced yellow fever is vomiting up blood or hemorrhaging. And even in the 21st century, there is no cure for the disease, although there is a vaccine which offers some immunity. And yes, there it is. I had known that from previous things that I've read that was a symptom. At first, though, when I was watching it, what I thought was, because I had already assumed Theo was going to die. I didn't have any insider information telling me that. I just thought it was the best way to create the story and move it forward. So I knew that he was going to die just because that's what makes sense. But when I saw the blood on the sheets, originally I thought maybe Eliza also died in childbirth and somehow Sidney had gotten the money left to the Parkers, because I thought they were also going to take Ruth Kearney's character out because she's also not returning. So I just thought they were both going to end up dying in the beginning of the series for that purpose. However, they chose to leave her alive and helping them, because I think that's going to cause some problems. Maybe she pulls the funding away in season 3 because maybe she'll remarry, so she will not have that obligation anymore. She'll have her obligation to her new husband, so maybe that's why Lady Susan might have to come in. And I know that, Louisa, you are one of my faithful followers who really, really wants Sidney to come back and was really sad that he's not coming back. And you had mentioned that you said, well, I was hoping that maybe there was an opening where he was faking death for some reason, but I realized Theo will not be coming back. Sad but true. It is. And, you know, we all wanted that ending. We all wanted that happy ending. But I really think that they gave us a really good version of something that is beautiful and that is sweet and good and kind. And I'm fairly satisfied with what they gave us in the second season. Yeah, there are things I critique, but I think that everybody can critique it, you know? I think there's possibility of all of that. All right, so I just figured out why I couldn't see all my comments. It's because I had the filter on. I haven't responded, but I haven't responded to a lot of these. I must have, like, put a heart on some of these, but I haven't actually responded to it. So, Season 2, Episode 4 recap. Violet Ember says that this episode got me really excited for the next two. I'm hoping that we at least get a resolution where Lennox and Edward are found out somehow. I'm also worried about Georgiana and Lockhart. I'm worried because I'm not 100% sure about Lockhart's true intentions. He's an artist, and she's an heiress. I agree with that. I know that there are some people who think that Lockhart loves him. I still want him to come back. Because I love Alex. I think he's a phenomenal actor. And Lockhart made me laugh a lot in the series. So I do want him back. I don't want him with Georgiana, though. I just want to see him on screen again. It's like, you know, you have those villainous characters, and you know they're not good. You know they're not okay to like, but you enjoy seeing them on screen, right? Because they're just fun to watch. They're fun to interact with, and you're drawn to them because they're exciting and they're different, and that's what Lockhart is. So I do want to see more of him, but I don't think he loves her, and I think that he is all bad news, 100% bad news. I'm going to try to go through some of these a lot of people on this post were responding as we posted it, and we were posting it right after the episode, so these things have already been found out. Susan Wilson, another faithful longtime fan, says, loving Allison and Frasier, looking forward to next week's episode. Who doesn't love Allison and Frasier? I love them. I might like them a little more than Colburn and Charlotte. Maybe it's because I love Charlotte, or I love Frasier so much. And Frasier's, I'm sure I will get there with Charlotte and Colburn to feel the same way I do about Frasier and Allison. Because actually, I like Charlotte more than Allison, but I like Frasier more than Colburn. And because Frasier is so developed already, and he's so, I think he still has room to grow, but he's fairly complete in who he is already. And he's pretty solid. That he builds that up in Allison. So they as a couple, I think they're a better couple, certainly. Gretchen says Carter's lied, deceived Allison. Intentionally, Allison's fault is mainly in deceiving herself and cluelessness and naivete. I agree. I think that Allison just wanted what her parents had, what she grew up with, what she had, this idea of what marriage and love is and what romanticism is and what real romance is. And she wanted that so bad that she was willing to take the first crack at it. And I think that obviously it turned out to be a mistake in her case because it was all surface level. Her idea of romance was not filled with substance. Her idea of romance was surface level likes and desires that were similar. And that's not what love is. Kristen Gower says, really enjoyed your discussion about Season 2, Episode 4. Thank you. Having discovered you, I need to now go back and listen to the previous episode recaps. Thank you so much. Yes, Kristen, I hope you did that. If you have not, go back and do all of our Season 1 ones too. And we do more than that, more than just recaps. We go deep diving into the psyche and personalities of the characters. And we do a lot of them we did all of them in Season 1. We do some that are just character spotlights of them individually. And we also take a look at relationships. So we did maybe 45 episodes last season. Before we started doing our Season 2 recaps. I think we had 45 episodes put out that were all recaps 1 through 8 of the show, and then there was character spotlights, and then there were character relationship dynamics where we examined relationships, and there were also some interviews on there. Excuse me, I had a 2-hour meeting today where I talked a lot because, that's what I like to do. Carol Saldana said, hi Maureen and Janice, it is really a joy to hear your viewpoints on my favorite show, Sanditon, and the results are absolutely heartening. I love the raw honesty of dissecting each event in the episode with so much detail. Thank you so much. We'll continue to enjoy future episodes. I want to hug Leo. She is wonderful. Thank you very much. That was a very kind thing to say. Detail is my favorite thing, even in life. I love to go into detail, and when I'm passionate about it, I am passionate about Sanditon, but in a healthy way, when I really fall in love with something, and even like when I do because I read Pride and Prejudice once a year. It's my favorite Jane Austen novel. I have read the other ones, but Pride and Prejudice, and I'll pick the other ones up here and there. I've read them each a couple times, but Pride and Prejudice is one I like to read every year. And then I'll get into this mode where I finished it and I'm not ready to leave that world. So what I'll do is I'll start reading Pride and Prejudice fan fiction, and then I'll start watching the movies, all of the different, well, actually that's not true, not all of them. I've only watched 2 of them. The 1995 version and the 2004 version are the only ones in my rotation. And then when those are done, I'll watch Lost in Austin, or I'll watch, what is the one with the girl in Felicity? I cannot remember. She goes to this Austin experience, and it ends up being a terrible thing, and I don't know, but I'll watch that one too, because I'm not ready to leave the world. And this podcast proved the perfect avenue, because I loved these characters of Sanditon so much. There was so much yet to be explored, and there was so much more I knew could be done with it. And the town is beautiful, the setting is beautiful, the storyline it ebbs and flows so nice. I was not ready to give it up, and so I decided to dive into this podcast, and instead of reading someone else's work of it, really kind of dig in and make my own thoughts and analysis on them. I did start writing a fan fiction, but I never published it and I never got it done. I saw that some of you were searching for fan fiction on my website. I don't have it up because I never really finished it. I was doing the outline, and then they announced season 2 is coming, and when it was coming, and then I stopped writing it right then because I didn't want to be upset with how it turned out. So maybe I'll finish it someday. And I do want to hug Leo too. I love Leo. She's amazing. Chris, 4 months ago, said, just found you. Thoroughly enjoyed your conversation about this episode. And I already responded to her, but I just want to say thank you for thinking of that. Or for saying that. Let's see. Ronnie Shamash said, Colburn's reaction seems not possessive, but he was so unnerved and shocked by Lennox's presence as Regency time. Employer felt he has some right to admonish her for a relationship he knew would be dangerous for her. I agree, he probably felt like that a little bit. I think it was to protect her, for sure. I didn't see any possession in it. I saw it as he knows that this man is bad news, so everyone should just know he's bad news. I think that he reacted so viscerally because it was someone else he was falling for that Lennox has come in and taken. And I think that he still would have had the same feelings about it had it been somebody else, but I think he would not have acted as passionately about it as he did with Charlotte, for obvious reasons, because it's the same situation playing out. But I don't think it was necessarily he had a right as her employer. I think he felt, from human to human, he had every right to tell her, you are not to see him again. He is bad for you. And he uses, I think, his excuse as an employer as kind of a cloak, as a protection, because he didn't want to admit the real reason why, which was, no, he's going to hurt you, and I'm already falling in love with you, and this is going to be bad if you're with him, kind of thing. At least that's my take on it. I'm sorry, there's a lot on here I didn't respond to. From episode 5 recap, Audrey Cumby says, Lennox assaulted Charlotte. He sure did. Yes, he did. He definitely tried to force himself on her, and that's just, whoo. Part of me, I know this would not be time period appropriate, but part of me wanted to see Colburn watch that transpire, because when Charlotte comes down the steps and he's like, what happened? And he looks at Lennox. I wanted him to walk up those steps when Lennox looked at him so smugly and just clock him right in the face, because he did assault Charlotte. And for all of Colburn's faults, there are faults that are from trauma, faults that he has not learned to deal with because he has not been taught how to deal with them. But also, trauma and strife at that time was not something that you sought help for. It was just something that you get over. It happens, you move on. And so he was just so pain-stricken that a lot of his responses came from trauma. So I think he's genuinely a chivalrous, decent, good, kind-hearted man who is you just got to chip away at it. And I kind of wish that he would have taken that stand against Lennox and clocked him. Gretchen has a couple responses here. She says, we all wanted to see Babington. Yes, we did. Babington's my favorite dude. If you guys have watched my podcast for any amount of time, you know that Babington is my man. I love Babington. Mark Stanley not being available made it more challenging, recreating a story arc for Esther. I agree. Mark Stanley's very, very good at it. All of these actors on the show are good, and Mark Stanley too. And I think that, unfortunately, just too much time passed for some of these actors, and they made other commitments, but they had already moved on from the project and from the character, and that's, I think, what made it really hard for them to come back. COVID just kind of, COVID messed everybody up. In one of the Justin Young interviews, they couldn't even get Mark Stanley for a new season 2 voiceover. Yeah. Yeah, that's accurate. The looks on Claire's face, hearing the things that come out of Edward's mouth are priceless. Revulsion, like she's seeing a monster shock. Yeah, and I think the more Clara sees that you can have allies in people of means, that you can have allies in people who are better off than you, and they aren't all your enemy. I think that started to crash down her narrative that she's been taught, that everyone is out to get you, especially those who have more than you. You have to be most wary of them, because she saw how kind Esther was being when Esther, I mean, honestly, Esther had no cause and no reason to at all. None. But she chose to anyway. And that compared to Edward's just flat out repulsive behavior, it really helped to create something in Clara that I think was really beautiful. Gretchen also says Clara had to do more than just remove the bottle because Esther was likely addicted by this time. Agreed. I think I agree with that. And that's why Edward will never be redeemed in my eyes, which is a bummer, because I used to like seeing Edward on the scene. Not anymore. I don't want to see Edward. Claire Smith said, great discussion. I wonder if Leah will run away into the grounds after hearing the truth about her parents, and Charlotte will help Colburn search for her. Wow, good guess. Look at you. Thank you for a great discussion. And obviously the rest we know what happened. Jupiter Crash said, can you help me with the math? If Lucy married young and within the year had a daughter, Leo, now 9, how is it possible for Augusta to be 18 years old? Her mom was Lucy's twin, so I don't get Augusta's age. Did her mom give birth at 10 to 15 years of age? That's me being generous in my calculations too. Or were they married for 7 years before Leonora was born? Is that how Colburn couldn't comfort her? Could he not be intimate with her? I'm not sure what he told Charlotte was the full story. Gretchen said, on one of Sanditon Facebook pages, someone posted a timeline possibly put together by PBS Masterpiece. Lucy, her twin sister, and Colburn were born in 1887. Augusta was born in 1802, when Lucy's sister was 15. And I think it indicated that Leonora was born in 1811, when Lucy and Colburn were both 24. That would make sense. I think that they married young, but I think it took a while for the problems to happen. And when she eventually moved to the city, it was because she had been stuck where she was at for so long. Jupiter Crash says, may I ask your thoughts on these 3 things? Lockhart claiming Georgiana is not Mr. Lamb's daughter. I think anyone who wants that money would try to claim that. You have to oust them, and you have to give them no claim to the fortune, so he's going to claim that. 2, Colburn stating he's nothing like his father. I don't think he is. I think that he's very different from his father. He's not abusive, but I think that he's been so afraid to be opposite of, like he was so afraid that he might eventually become his father, that he is run so far in the opposite direction. Where his father was super abusive, now Colburn just doesn't touch his kids at all, and he doesn't give them any affection or attention. So I don't think he's anything like his father, but I think the fact that he cares about whether or not he is shows you right there that just in essentials, he's nothing like him. And 3, Mrs. Wheatley and Colburn are very uncommonly close. She defended Colburn, saying there's more to him than you can imagine. I think that... Oh, there's more. I'm stringing these together, thinking Colburn's father got Mrs. Wheatley pregnant. Mr. Lamb raised her while Colburn took Wheatley in when he inherited the house because he felt guilty for his dad's actions. I think Lockhart set out to marry Georgiana to get his money, but actually fell in love with her. Maybe I'm reading too much into all this. In terms of Mrs. Wheatley and Colburn, I would say rather that Mrs. Wheatley has been the housekeeper there since Colburn was young. Whether that was from birth or from a very young age, and she would have been around to discipline him or to keep him in line or to, when the parents were gone, she would be watching Colburn. So I think it comes from almost like a motherly role for her, is what I would say. And I don't think Lockhart loves Georgiana. I think Lockhart loves money. Let's see. Denise Sayer says, I felt from the beginning Lockhart was bad news and has a hidden agenda. When Lennox makes the comment about things changing in a few short weeks, you could just see Charlotte thinking back to her previous time in Sanditon and Sydney. Bad move on Lennox's part, though he didn't know it, because he is always going to come up wanting in comparison to Sydney. Colburn's office door being open is significant. It is a physical symbol that he's opening himself up a little bit in response to Charlotte calling him out on closing himself off from Leo and Augusta. I agree with that. Again, this is just the background things that tell their own story and are used to further the story along without saying a word. Violet Embers at the 12:25 mark says, I think the meaning of power was not a tangible thing. I believe here Charlotte was referring to Sidney's speech when he was beginning to propose on the balcony about being emotionally in someone else's power. Charlotte experienced love, betrayal, and loss, and she doesn't want to give away those feelings anymore. That's why her feelings for Colburn are hard to understand and accept at first. Charlotte's emotional arc this season reminds me of Sidney's arc from season 1. The enemies to lovers trope, except it was both of them being emotionally closed off, while in season 1, it was just Sidney being closed off. This season really gave me more than I expected. I am sad that I have to wait possibly another year to see season 3, but I know it'll be worth it. I agree, it will be absolutely worth it. As for Charlotte and Sidney, again, I think that while they both were of the mindset, I'm not going to be in another relationship, I'm never doing this again, Charlotte's came from a place of her very immediate grief. Sidney's came from a place of years and years of hardening his heart against people and ensuring he wouldn't do that. Now, for Charlotte, I don't think she actually was closed off. I think she was trying to convince herself she was closed off because when Colburn started opening himself up to her, she was receptive to it and she was opening up to him. And I think that's why when he broke it off, it was such a devastation for her. And I think that's where the enough statement came from, because she realized, I did it again. I was open again. I was vulnerable again, and it bit me. So, but I think that those are good observations too. Kim Otterbeck posted something. Let's see what she says. I can't wait till you see the true colors of Lockhart. I did, ma'am. I did. All right, we'll do the finale recap, and then we'll get into some of the character things. You guys had a lot to say on our character things, and you did not all agree with what we had to say. Olivina Richmond said, Otis has joined the Navy. Perhaps he finds Georgiana's mother, thus redeeming himself with Georgiana. I don't think he's coming back either. I think Jayuda James, I think he's out. So I don't think that's a possibility. It would be nice, but I don't think it's a possibility. James Stringer had a West Country accent, nowhere near a London accent. You're right. But there was an interview that he had done where they asked him what his accent was. And he said, I don't know, I just put something together. And Olivina also says, maybe Colburn will meet Eliza Parker in London. Why do we want that, though? I don't think we want that. Maybe Sam Colburn, but not Alexander. Catherine Begley says, one question for you both. Charlotte said at one point toward the end of the episode that she had known heartache and betrayal. I'm curious about her use of the word betrayal. Is she talking about Sidney betraying her? If so, do you think that Sidney betrayed her, or did the circumstances Sidney and his family found themselves in limit their choices about how to avoid debtor's prison, bankruptcy, ruin? I think it was her heart that betrayed her. I think, or something to that effect, because she couldn't tell Sidney, I want you to stay, though he would have had she asked. I think that in her love for him, she had to let him go. And it was painful and agonizing. I don't think she sees that. I don't think she thinks Sidney betrayed her. I think she understood why Sidney did it. I think that she saw Sidney's pain as well. I really genuinely think that she saw how painful it was for Sidney. I think that she was betrayed by her heart as she views it. Catherine also says, while I continue to be saddened by the fact that Charlotte and Sidney did not wind up together, in many ways, the long-term effects that she had on who he was and became after their painful parting helps to counter the sadness a bit. And I agree. I think that it was because of Charlotte, not Charlotte didn't do it to him. It was because of Charlotte that he was able to let down his guard, break down the walls, and drop the barricade, and be vulnerable. Well, there's a whole lot of cliches in that one sentence I just used. But I think it was him letting himself be more vulnerable that allowed him to be transformed by, as cheesy as this sounds, by love and affection, because that's what he was missing dearly. Robin says, thoughts about Colburn always twisting or fiddling with his pinky ring. Nothing, just good acting. Colburn's awkwardness, any symbolism. I personally think it shows a sign that he is feeling out of control and he needs to channel it somehow. He needs to find control over something, because I think that his emotions as it pertains to Charlotte, he's reacting in ways he doesn't fully understand why he's doing it. He's almost doing things without his mind. You see Colburn staying longer at the picnic or going to the garden party or, all these different things that he's done. He almost seems confused by the fact that he's there. Like, I don't know why I'm here. I didn't mean to come here. And I think that's because it's all due to his emotions for Charlotte, his feelings for Charlotte. Judith says, yes, I thought Georgiana was a spoiled, entitled woman who was a constant complainer before she broke down and cried over knowing her mother was alive. It humanized her. It made me like her a little better. I think I started to like her in the beginning of season 2. I think Sydney's death started to alter her. I think she was trying to find her voice and her place that was solely hers, that it wasn't because of Otis, it wasn't because she was fighting Sydney, because it was either I'm doing this because Otis does it and I love him, or I'm doing this because Sydney hates it and I want to spite him. And I think that what we see in season 2 is Georgiana trying to find her own voice. So I actually liked her pretty much right away in season 2. I mean, it took like an episode, but I liked her pretty much right away. Joy Fox says, thank you for your wonderful coverage of the series. When do you think we'll have a character analysis of Colburn and Lennox? And any talk about season 3, please? When we know more about season 3, we'll start putting out some of those episodes. Colburn has been done. Lennox is coming up. We have some people going before Lennox, but he will be one of our character analysis spotlights. Kim says, I hope all is well and going forward for you ladies. I also hope that we get to discuss Sanditon in the future. I wish that I could see season 3 and get a feel of what is happening, like I did with Lockhart being Georgiana's cousin. With the teasers we have been given so far, I don't know what to expect. It's driving me crazy. I agree. Driving me crazy too. Luann says, thank you. You are welcome. Thank you for watching, Luann. Susan St. Jacques says, thanks for such a detailed review. You're very welcome. It's so nice to see how everyone loves the series. Just a few comments and thoughts. I agree with Chris Keffer's comments previously. I think there's a connection between Alexander Colburn and Sydney. I don't know if there is. Alexander is always nervously playing with his little finger ring, which is similar to Sydney's ring. Ms. Wheatley is an interesting character. She's so much too familiar with Alexander to just be head of the household, and I think she's Georgiana's mother. If you are the head of the household and you helped raise one of the sons or one of the children, you are going to be familiar with them. And that's what I think the case is. I think Alexander and the girls did not go to London. Alexander hated London, and it holds so many bad memories. Why would he return there? I think he would return there because it shows that he is not going to be held down by fear, and he is not going to let himself be consumed with what was, and he's going to move forward. I think that's the symbolism there. I think he's going to go to London because it's what's best for Leonora, or it's best for Augusta, and it will be good for Leonora to see it. So I think it shows him thinking outside himself, and I think that's the transformative nature that Sydney had, that Colburn is starting to experience. So I think he is going to London. I don't think he went to Antigua. There's a lot here. He has a brother. Is it possible he lives there? I think Sam lives in London. I think Georgiana, and that's just an assumption of mine. I think Georgiana can only marry a man with money since she could never trust anyone who might be after her money. I don't think she has to. I don't think she can only marry. I think that she might want to in order to be sure that that's why they're really marrying her. Also, has anyone thought about Augusta's age compared to Leo? We already talked about that. The other things that are not historically accurate include having a governess who comes from a family with no money attend balls and garden parties with the social elite. Here's the thing, though. Charlotte was a gentleman's daughter. She may have been poor, but she was sponsored by the Parkers when she went to those balls. And so it's what's a little odd is a governess coming from a gentleman's family who is living with another family while going to the house that she's a governess for. That's a little misconstrued, but it's a town, it's a smaller town, it's not London, so it's probably more acceptable. Jane Eyre comes to mind. She's always sat in the corner. Yes, but again, the Parkers were essentially sponsoring Charlotte when she was there with them. And the amazing acceptance of a woman of color in society, which I love seeing in a historical piece at that time. I agree. But I think that they were trying to showcase some of the issues then. And I think Jane Austen was a forward-thinking writer. And I think that that's why it was put in there, because I think she was written that way. She was written as, I believe the term Jane Austen used was Milano in her book. In the start of it, so she actually wrote it that way, and I think that they're writing the acceptance of that was in the mindset that Jane Austen was such a forward thinker. Perhaps they were both accepted since they were living with the elite in Sanditon. Glad they included both characters. Ground Control 436385 says, I don't see Alexander as ever being mean to Charlotte. He's lost his temper, but not been mean. I think he was, when he felt he had to push her away, he chose his words specifically to be cruel, I think. Mary McAllister says, you two are awesome. I love your enthusiasm for Sanditon. I'm going through your catalog, listening to everything. Just a thought. Just thought I would let you know. Take care. Thank you very much, Mary. We appreciate you watching us, and we love that you love it as much as we do. Just a couple more on this one. I'm trying to... This is the season finale recap, so there is a lot of comments that are paragraph long. Judith Adams says, do you ladies think they will bring back Sydney to marry Charlotte in season 3? Absolutely not. The only reason for him to come back is to marry Charlotte, otherwise don't come back. Happiness is not Colburn. I absolutely do not want Charlotte or Colburn to end up with Charlotte. Really? If Theo won't come back, bring back Stringer to end up with Charlotte. Stringer would not make her happy. Stringer is, he does not want the same thing Charlotte wants. He's ambitious, but Charlotte wants to create in a different way than Stringer wants to create. I think Stringer and Charlotte would make great friends. I think they would feed off each other very, very well. But Charlotte is okay where she's at. She just likes to create and see beauty where she's at. And I think Stringer, while I wouldn't say he has more ambition than Charlotte, I think they have the same-ish in terms of creativity. I think Stringer's main drive is he really desperately wants to make something of himself and to continue to succeed and rise. And Charlotte doesn't have that same drive. So I don't think they want the same things. And in terms of Colburn and Charlotte, I think that's the best match. I think that's the most Jane Austen too, quite frankly. I think that those two together makes the most sense from a Jane Austen perspective, from a romance perspective, I think that there's something so beautiful about love being the cause of you transforming your life, like with Jesus Christ. You come to Christ because you know how much you need him and how much you love him, how much you have a desperate want for him, and that's where that comes from. And I think that there's a beauty in that in relationship we have. It's not that we change the people we're with, it's that loving them and them loving us changes their perspective and it changes their priorities. And I think there's something so beautiful about that. And I really think that's what's going to happen with Charlotte and Colburn. Okay, let's go into the Charlotte spotlight. I'm trying to talk fast before my battery dies. Olivina Richmond says, Charlotte told Colburn that she had suffered heartbreak and betrayal. So did she secretly resent Sydney's choice? No. I think she was pained by it, obviously. I don't think she resented Sydney, certainly not after he died. I think she just kind of held out hope that there was going to be a solution until he died. And then that was a betrayal that her heart held out for, is what I think. Jean, simply Jean, says, hello, Maureen and Janet. Oh, that's a big one. Jean, I am not going to read this one on air because there is a lot there. There's an awful lot there. Vanessa Carr says, on one of the recent PBS podcasts, Rose Williams stated that she was not happy about her character Charlotte deciding to become engaged to Ralph because Rose felt that something Charlotte would not have done. I agree. It was a weird choice. And I think the only reason they put it in there is because we're going to find that Colburn or Susan or somebody is going to rescue her in some way instead of Charlotte having to be the one to be the rescuer. I can't think of another reason why they had that arc in there. I don't, because a broken engagement is not a good thing back then. Denise Sayer says, I agree that Sydney was in London with Eliza because that's where they were making their elaborate wedding plans. They were for a bit when they got married, but then they separated, and Sydney went to Antigua. Mystical Margaret says, Charlotte's father is a gentleman farmer with land and tenants. He's not just a poor dirt farmer. 3 failed harvests in a row and 14 mouths to feed. He and his wife and 12 children have strained his finances, but he's a gentleman just the same. This is such a treat. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, I agree. But the fact is that he is poor at the moment. He is poor when Charlotte goes there. Their finances are strapped. And that's what I meant when I said he's just a poor, lowly farmer because he can't afford things right now. Not that he's not a gentleman. That's what made her and Stringer not at the same level. Because she's a gentleman's daughter and Stringer is not a gentleman's son. But he doesn't have a lot of money right now to spend or to spare. Louisa says, I think it's kind of cute that Janice has a little crush on Lennox. I bet she won't admit it. Very cute. I love that comment. I agree. But I mean, it's Tom Weston Jones. Can you really blame her? Because, I mean, he's dynamite, right? Louisa also says, in season 2, I never saw Charlotte with any joy, even when I thought she was in love with Colburn. That's because the whole of season 2, not the whole of it, but she was nursing. She wasn't just dealing with grief from broken heart. She was dealing with grief from Sydney dying. I really think that some part of her, like us in the fandom, held out hope that because they were so good and so right and so fit for each other, hope was still there as long as Sydney was alive. And so when he died, she had to nurse her broken heart, and she had to deal with that betrayal of it. And I think Louisa and Augusta made her happy. I think we see her joy in the picnic with Colburn. I see when she's with Georgiana, she's smiling. Arthur makes her smile. I think that she's just really struggling with her new reality of grief-stricken, lost in love. And I mean, I don't think her and Colburn, that would have been a quick jump to go from when Sydney died to when Colburn, if they would have gotten together at the end of season 2, I think they would have been too soon because she was learning this new reality. So I think it totally makes sense that a lot of season 2, she was grief-stricken. Kim says, I hate to say this because it's probably not something that should be said. I love those. But I'm wondering if Colburn's brother is brought in by Lady Susan and Charlotte ends up falling in love with him. No, Kim, no. Just my mind working like it always does. Mystical Margaret says, that would be quite the twist. No. I veto that. We have put too much time and energy into Alexander Colburn. We are not settling for a brother second fiddle. No way, no how, ma'am. All right. Let's see if we have any comments on that. We do have some comments on Allison, but I mean, they need to come up. Robin says, you mentioned a teaser of Ralph and Charlotte walking into a party. I've only seen Augustus and Colburn walking into the party with Charlotte there. Did I hear you wrong, or is there another teaser? Pray tell. There is, I don't remember if it's a picture, if it's in a video of season 3, but it looks like Charlotte walking in with Ralph. You see the Ralph in the top hat, you see Charlotte's hair, and it looks like it's them. That's the one I'm talking about. Kim says, I'm confused. I'm showing that there's still 50 minutes or so left. However, you guys just said, not, did I miss something, or is my phone not working properly? Ooh, gonna have to check this video, I guess. Charlotte is 3-20 in season 2 per her governess conversation with Mary. Man, I need to rewatch this series is what I need to do, right? Maybe I just need to rewatch it on repeat. Is that a good idea? I think it's probably what all you guys are doing. It's probably why I'm getting people like, hey, why didn't you notice this? Which I've gotten quite a few of those. In the Allison Charlotte video, Chris Keffer says, I think Charlotte viewed Ralph as lukewarm and expected that kind of marriage with him which she thought she could tolerate. Wrong. I don't feel she disliked him. I agree. But thought she could manage him as she would love him. She would not love him and she would never feel the pain of unrequited love again. I think that's more it. I don't think it's that she thought she could run him or manage him. I think it's that she thought, this is safe. If I marry him, I know for a fact my heart will never be broken again because I do not love this man. I hope that makes sense. I may be wrong, but I feel Ralph isn't going to give Charlotte up easily. I'm sort of hoping for that because I think that would make it really interesting to watch, but I'm also not hoping for that because it almost makes correcting this unbelievable because a broken engagement was a huge deal. In fact, I don't get a good feeling about him. I don't either. He feels right. He feels there's something off with him. While will he feel he's finally won the prize and he's not going to give it up? He's waited a long time for her. Does anyone else feel that way? Thank you for being here for us, Maureen and Janice. You are very welcome. We love being here for you. I agree. I'm glad you brought that up because there is something off with Ralph. I don't know what it is, but it's the way he smiles at her and looks at her. It's just like, not yours. That's not yours. Kim says, it was at least 5 months because Esther carried and lost the daughter after 5 months. So truly, I'm thinking it's spring. I wish I remember what that was in reference to. I'm sorry, Kim. I'm failing you. Are you saying it's spring there in that time frame? Okay, so let's go to the Alexander Colburn one, which I got a lot of these that were like, what is wrong with you? Although, UM says, thank you, ladies, for a stimulating discussion. You are very welcome. Karen Hodgeberg says, I love your podcast. Thank you. I just want to point out that Colburn's connection to animals shows up in several places. 1, when Charlotte walks out of her interview, Colburn's dog follows her home for a bit. In addition, before he gives Charlotte the news of his bad decision, he is discussing with the girls about getting a companion for the dog. Colburn states that the dog spoke to him, was lonely, and needed a companion, so his decision was to get a new puppy. Ben Lloyd Hughes, in an interview, stated that to see Colburn's emotion, there always involves an animal. Absolutely right. I agree with that. I think that's a really good observation. I think it's absolutely true. I think the two that when he said about the dog is lonely, needed a companion, he was obviously talking about himself and how that's what he needs. But he's going to do it for the dog because he feels that he is sacrificing it for himself. Cindy Bain says, remember Charlotte dubbed him with his worst enemy. She also says, I love this guy. I think Charlotte made some mistakes that were great red flags for Alexander. I relate so much to Alexander. Ben is amazing. I don't know that I would say Charlotte made some mistakes that were great red flags. I think they were both, she was grieving the loss of someone she loved deeply, her first love, her true love, And I think Alexander is hating himself and grieving that. So I think that they both did not handle things well, but I wouldn't say that there was red flags from Charlotte. I would say there were more from Alexander, although there aren't many there either. I think it's just attitude. Audrey Cumby says, I agree with you, Maureen. I like to hear that. You want to get in good with me, you just say I'm right a lot. Alexander Colburn is a man of substance. He took on running the family estate as a very young man. He had a rough childhood with an alcoholic father, married extremely young to an immature young woman who learned all too late that her husband was a better man than her lover. He is raising 2 children who are not his alone. All this while recovering from his own childhood trauma. He will get it together and come and get our girl Charlotte to be his equal and loving wife. Yes! I am here for that, Audrey. I am here for that. Janice K, not my Janice, but Janice K says, does Charlotte have another younger sister old enough to marry? Maybe she'll marry the farmer who seems like a nice guy. I think that would be a nice twist. That happened in Sense and Sensibility, right? With Edward Ferrars. His older brother or younger brother married Edward Ferrars' fiance, so maybe there's a chance for that. They did say they pulled inspiration from a lot of Jane Austen's stories, although they didn't rip anything off. I hope that's kind of the direction they go. Catherine Begley says, Maureen and Janice, thank you for your wonderful analysis of Alexander's character and struggles and relationships with his children and with Charlotte. You are very welcome. I wonder if you would be open to doing a podcast on Alexander and Sydney. That is coming, I promise you. There's similarities and differences in how and where they play a role in informing Charlotte's life journey. Yep. I think that the listeners will be interested in that, and that is something that we'll be discussing. We like to do parallels and ironies, and that is a parallel we will be discussing for sure. Katarina, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry. I just don't want to make it sound terrible. He says, Maureen, I agree wholeheartedly with most things you said about Colburn. As most people do. I, too, think he's a good match for Charlotte. He has a lot of working out to do in order to deserve Charlotte. Absolutely. And definitely the gentleman farmer Ralph is definitely not for Charlotte. Oh, for sure. Great to listen to you both. It's helping us to bear the distance between season 2 and season 3. Keep it going, please. P.S. I do love Charlotte and Alexander walking through the fields of his park. They are so in sync with each other. Absolutely. I think that they both have some growing up to do. I think Charlotte has to heal. And I think that's Charlotte's biggest issue. She is not healed from Sydney yet. At all. In any way, shape, or form. Leanna says, a couple thoughts. Alexander has one trait I find irresistible. He so clearly needs Charlotte. Yes, he does. But I think not in an unhealthy way. I think that he needs her, but I don't think it's going to be healthy until they both get some healing done. Yes, he is self-absorbed. I wouldn't say he's self-absorbed. I think he is in the way that he hates himself so much, and he looks at every relationship through that lens of how terrible he is and how much damage he'll do to them. That way he thinks more about himself. He spends a lot of time in his own head rehashing his interactions. On the plus side, he reflects on her words and then tries to implement an improvement. Sometimes he does that. Most of the time he does that. He respects her as well as needing her. This is the seed of an idea I have about season 3. I think Ralph is going to end up being a traditional about a woman's place, and Colburn will support her ideas, plans. Oh, I hope that happens. I think so. Colburn will no matter what, for sure. Renee Ziegler says, I've enjoyed listening to you both. Parse all things Sanditon. Thank you. We're very glad to be here. As far as the character of Alexander Colburn, I think you missed a subtle but really important clue to his past. At the garden party, Lady Denham asks Colburn if he will partake in the archery contest like his father. Alexander replies that he's nothing like his father. Lady Denham then replies, well, that's a relief. It will save me a fortune in wine. Lady Denham's remark is noteworthy. She's implying that Colburn's father had a slight significant drinking problem. Yep, we caught that. I think we discussed it. I don't know if we discussed it in this, but we discussed it in something. But, yep, we caught that. Kim says, Ralph could pass away from something. Just a thought. Man, Kim, don't... we want to start killing off new people? Carol Saldana says, looking forward to next week, Maureen Janice. Oh, thanks. She also says, Colburn inherited the children. Augustus' parents passed away, and Leo may not be his child, so he needs to learn to be a parent. He can't be judged as distant. He just needs to grow into the relationship. I really do think Charlotte will play a big part in bringing that about. She has slowly broken the barriers with the girls. Maureen, you seem to get it right. Yes, I do. Carol also says, again, just to be sure, I really do agree with you, Maureen. You seem to analyze Alexander very well, and I really do like him. Thank you. I'm really not arrogant. I just like to pretend I am. Do give him a chance. It's a shock to his system meeting Charlotte, so give him a chance to surprise us. Yes. Carol, she said, Augusta, ladies. Mrs. Wheatley, yes. We did figure it out. It's, again, I haven't been able to rewatch it, so it had been a while after recovering from mastectomy thing. I know that was before mastectomy, but I was recovering from some stuff. Miriam says, for some reason at the end of the last episode, I was left with the expression that the housekeeper is his natural mother. You're not the first person to say that, Miriam. I don't see it. I really don't. I don't think any way it could be possible, but, you know. The reason he was distant from his wife is fear of having a child who might give away his heritage. The army officer commented on the fact that Alexander was physically distant from his wife, so I put 2 together and came up with 5. That's great. Stephanie Bernier says, I agree with Maureen. Man, I am loving this. Keep that coming. Keep that energy coming my way. He wrongly thinks he's protecting Charlotte from himself. In episode 3, when Charlotte wants to know why he is distant with the girls, he tells her that in time she'll realize it's better for the girls. He's convinced that he is bad for the people around him. I think at the end of the season, he leaves Hayrick Park to change his software. Ooh, I like that analogy. Jay Stipula says, you cannot compare Alexander and Sydney. You can compare them. 2 very different men. That's why you can compare them. Sydney was a jerk, being polite, to pine over Liza, dumping him over someone who is wealthier. That's, yeah, Alexander's noble regardless of his faults. Yeah, I agree with that. But I don't think Sydney was a jerk. I think Sydney was broken, just like Alexander's broken. Welcome, Kim Otterbeck says, welcome back, ladies. Xander only saw the negative in them because that's all he sees in himself. Yes, that is true. Preach it, sister. Okay, so we're going to go into Charlotte and Colburn now. And I want you to know that I had to stop the recording for a minute, and I did notice my lipstick has been crazy this entire hour. So, fix that. And now you might go back and look at how insane it actually looks. All right, so Colburn and Charlotte. Olivina Richmond says, I don't understand why Charlotte, who claims that she does not want to marry very quickly, is trying to cultivate a romantic relationship with her wealthy employer. I don't think she was trying. I think she was actually trying to be standoffish. And I think she was trying to be, what's the word I'm looking for? I think she was trying to be someone who was just concerned about her position and her role in the girls. But the thing is that I brought up not that long ago that Sydney was broken, and so is Alexander Colburn. And Charlotte is drawn to broken people. I don't think it was a romantic drawing in. I think that she found herself falling in love with him, but I think at first it was just she sensed his pain and she was trying to alleviate that, because that's Charlotte's instinct, is to alleviate pain. She also did it with Leo. She did it with Augusta. That's how it started, was she was trying to alleviate that pain. And it just so happened that as she began to alleviate his pain, she saw who he was and she started to have feelings for him. I don't think she was fully in love with him by the end. I think she had feelings for him by the end. I don't think she was trying to marry him by the end, but I think she had feelings for him. Obviously with the kiss that she allowed him to have, although he was, I don't know that, I don't think he was abusive or took advantage of her at all, but I don't think she would have really been able to say no to it. However, I do think that she was not trying to do that. I think it was just an offshoot of getting to know him as she tried to alleviate his pain. And I don't think she was flirting with him at all. She said her going back to the house after the ball would have caused disgrace. That's not what would have caused disgrace, because Augusta was in the carriage with her, remember, so she was not alone with him as far as they knew. And she was the governess, so it would have been okay for her to go back to the house with him. What would have been scandalous, although not quite a disgrace, but scandalous, would have been Alexander accompanying her alone from the carriage to his house back to Trafalgar House. Those two being alone in a carriage would have been highly suspect. But they could also explain, well, I'm her employer, and maybe there would have been a maid. We don't know how she got home. But her being in that house wouldn't have been a disgrace, and Augusta accompanied them back to the house, so they had a chaperone, so to speak. Allowing her employee to kiss her, especially on such short acquaintance, would suggest that she is very immoral. I don't agree with it either, and I don't think that it was very short notice. I think we are given 6 to 8 episodes in a season, but those are meant to accompany or encompass a long period of time. It's not like those are 7 to 8 days, 7 to 8 weeks, or 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Those are months. So we don't know how long exactly they have known each other. I don't think it's so much that, in that time, I don't think it's so much that she allowed him to kiss her necessarily, that I think she was caught off guard by it, as it happened, especially the first time. She saw his deep pain and she had feelings for him by that point, and she was trying to comfort that. So I think when she reached and grabbed his hand, her instinct was to comfort him and take it all away. And when he kissed her, I think she was thrown off guard, and obviously she didn't mind it. But then when they were walking the grounds, I don't think she expected it then either. However, with Sydney, she had known what it felt like. And I think with the kiss the other night, she realized that it was the same sort of feelings that she had for Sydney. I don't think they were as developed, but I think she sort of felt this is going in that same direction. So I think it was easier for her to allow that kiss the second time. The housekeeper would have kept the distance between them, not if the master of the house said no. She wouldn't have. And I think that the housekeeper has also known Alexander long enough to know he would not actually compromise her. Appearance-wise, possibly, but again, as she was his governess in his house and his kids were present, not in the room, but there was nobody else there to see that she was not with the kids. So there was no proof of that. And I know that you don't need proof to start a scandal, but there was a very valid reason for her to be in that house as the governess of those children. So there wouldn't have really been a scandal for that particular thing. It is not Charlotte's place to think that she should sort out her employees' emotional problems. It's not, and I don't think she started off doing that. I think her true instinct was just to help. I really think that's what it was. It's what she did with Augusta and Leo, and that's just who Charlotte is. And remember, she doesn't come from a family where she is an employee. She doesn't come from a family that is workers. She comes from a gentleman's family. She is a gentleman's daughter, which would have meant she didn't work on anything outside of maybe whatever her father allowed her to help with on their land, on their parcel. But she would not have worked. She would not have experienced that. So Charlotte is just being Charlotte as she has ever been. She isn't thinking like an employee because she doesn't know that world. She said, however much she thinks he needs to change. In fact, it makes her an inexperienced young female seem as though she thinks herself superior to him in that respect. I think she can see that he is causing the girls pain, and usually that's what she's speaking to, is you are causing these girls pain. I can see it in them. I can physically see you doing it to them, and it's not okay to cause them pain. It's not their fault. And I think any human being can see that, whether you're a parent or not, whether you think you're superior or not, you can see that in someone, and I think that's what Charlotte does. The Saint Charlotte Superwoman character is very unrealistic, I'm afraid. I think there are aspects of her character that are unrealistic. I do. Like when she saved Leo in the parade, I think that was unrealistic. I think the way she got the job was perhaps a little unrealistic. But I think her being that kind of person is not. I think there were strong women like that who voiced their opinion in that time. They weren't always successful as she is, and maybe that's the unrealistic aspect that you're speaking to, is that she's successful a lot. I don't think that would have been the case all the time. Colburn is immature and one-dimensional. Oh, I wouldn't say he's one-dimensional. I don't think he's immature either. I think he's broken and hurting. But he's certainly not one-dimensional. There are layers and layers to that man. And I think we're going to see that a lot more in season 3. How many unconvincing cliffhangers do we have to endure? I don't know that these are unconvincing cliffhangers. I think that after the first cliffhanger that was actually a cliffhanger, if they wanted to, they could have ended season 2 where it was. It would have been less of a cliffhanger than the way they left season 3. And I think that they are a little gun-shy of leaving us with that kind of cliffhanger ever again. Luckily, they have a fandom who fights for them, and they know that, so they could have, but they chose not to torture us that way. So I think the way they ended it is actually kind of... I mean, every show that you go to, when it's preparing for a season after this, they're going to want you to come back, so they have to leave you with something. They should have ended Sanditon after season 1, except they should have had a happy ending. They're even recycling dialogue from season 1. The absence of so many characters from season 1 and holes in the plot made season 2 a very poor relation to season 1. I'm going to disagree with you there. I think that they wanted to... I think that everyone who wanted the Sidlot, they wanted season 2. They wanted season 3. They wanted season 4. I think that a lot of people who want Sidlot can say it should have ended at season 1 because then it would be Sidlot. But that no one would have been satisfied with that. Not truly. Because we want Charlotte to be happy. Maybe not if you don't like Charlotte, you don't want her to be happy. But if you... Like for me, I started watching because it's a Jane Austen piece. Or Jane Austen inspired, as it were, piece. And I want a Jane Austen ending. I would not have been satisfied if it ended the way season 1 ended. I know you're saying that they should have had a happy ending, but they were trying to give us more. They were trying, the way the story was in season 1, even if you ended it from season 7 to, hey, we're engaged now, it wouldn't have been a complete story arc. They wanted to have a complete story arc, so they were trying to continue the story. And I think that was a valid thing to do. I don't think that they should have done something as risky as they did in trying to trick people into renewing the series, but I think they were doing all they could. I think it's not their fault that there's so many absences in characters, but we also have to acknowledge there are a lot. There are more returning characters than there are absent characters. So I think that they did a great job. They wanted to make season 1 a happy ending, but life happened, and these people don't owe us anything. And I'm talking about the actors. They don't owe us anything. They have lives of their own too. And I think that we have to understand it was 2 years between these. Not only did a pandemic hit, but they moved on to other projects. They've left that character. They said goodbye to that character. As actors, they cannot continue to hold on to this other character while moving forward. And I think that for some actors, that's actually something they actually cannot do, because if they hold on to this other character, it's hard to break out into another character. They need to work. So I don't hold that against anybody. I don't know that they're recycling dialogue from season 1. I think that maybe there's a couple of lines, but I think every show does that. You could say that about everything you'd ever watch. It's on the whole, it's brand new. So I didn't see enough of that for it to be a problem or a conducive error. I think the reason season 2 might be viewed as inferior to season 1 is because season 1, we were so invested and so connected, and then had it ripped away from us, and we felt bereft, that in season 2, what the writers mercifully tried to do was build us. They knew we were going in a different direction, and they knew they had to make us fall in love with this storyline, and they knew that they wanted to make it a real true Jane Austen trope, and they knew they had 2 seasons to do it in. So I think season 2, the reason that season 2 is the way it is because they were trying to build up a story, and they were trying to give us the full arc. Season 1 was not a full story arc. It wasn't. No matter how you feel about it, it was not a full story arc. So what they did with season 2 is they're trying to give us a full story arc while including the previous storyline. And I think that they did a good job of that, because this would be basically part 1 of a Jane Austen story. This is half of a book. And the second half is where we're going to get the second half of an Austen story. It's going to go in a different direction, the direction that everybody wants it to go, if they are invested in that story plot line. So I think that they have to build it up. And I really think that these writers have done a great job appeasing us. They really tried. They did try to give us what they want, no matter what anybody thinks. They tried. They really, truly did. But it didn't work out. And people said no, and they have no control over that. And I think that they've done a really great job with what they have, with the people they have, giving us a storyline that has the capability to fulfill its full story arc, not just part of it, with 2 seasons. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, and if we can go beyond just what we want, it has to be Sidlot or nothing, just because we love Sidlot so much. If we can go beyond our stubbornness, we can actually see, even if you treat season 1 and 2 as 2 completely separate shows, we can get beyond it and see that they actually did a great job with it. They really did. Sorry, but a little tangent there. Karen Hochberg says, I love your podcast. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. I just want to point out that Colburn's connection to animals shows up in several places. We've already talked about that, I think. All right, Robin Lowy is probably how you pronounce that. Sorry if I butchered that. Says, full disclosure, I'm Team A Colburn. What does that mean, A Colburn? But I'm Team Colburn too. I'm on the same team as you. I'm fighting for him too. Thoughts. Would Charlotte not marry anyone, remain an independent woman? I keep thinking Justin Young said it's explained in season 2 or episode 1 or 2. I think we can find that she's going to marry very quickly on in the season. I mean, not that we see that they're going to get married then, but I think that we can see that that's where the story is going based on her interactions with these people. Kim Otterbeck says, I think that Alexander Colburn's brother Sam, if I'm remembering the name correctly, I believe you are, is going to come into town with Lady Susan because I think their cousins were related in some way. That would be kind of a fun twist. I mean, Lady Susan can give her all the background. Kim goes on to say, so I think that's how Charlotte is going to be brought back into the circle of Colburn. Also, maybe the brother who is Charlotte will marry. Or maybe the brother who Charlotte will marry. Stop that. Kim, stop that. And then she followed that up with, haha, just a thought, haha. No, bad Kim. We do know where she's marrying Alexander. We cannot keep giving her someone different to marry. Several different people to marry every season. We can't keep doing that. No. Joel Friedman says, great discussion, ladies. Very good. Thank you very much. Very good insight in Alexander Colburn, Marine. Thank you. Next week definitely will be fun. Yes, the next episode does end up being fun. Jay Stibula says, ladies, I agree. We appreciate that. I would pay good money to get my hands on that 10-page biography of Alexander, right? I wonder if there's a biography on all characters. That would be fantastic. Justin Young, you've got to do that. That would make a phenomenal companion to the series. Andrew and Justin would make money hand over fist on that alone. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? I mean, now I kind of want to get my hands in there. If they refuse to do it, I want to get in there and do it. All right, our last one, guys, is on our Leonora and Augusta video. Let's see what some comments you have on there. Carrie Osborne says, I enjoyed your discussion. With regards to the portrait, I did not know if it has definitely been identified as Lucy. I didn't either. I don't remember hearing that. I wondered if it might be Colburn's mom, but perhaps writers have said and I hadn't heard. Hats off to you for all your excellent content. That was just 39 minutes ago. I honestly, I don't remember them saying that at all. But again, I didn't rewatch it several hundred times. So maybe I'm wrong there. I mean, it could be assumed that that's her. But I don't remember them saying that. Mary Ossie says, regarding a season 4, I read recently that the Sanditon Town set has already been struck and a set for some other show has been built. Deeply disappointing. I especially want to see the girls' storylines continue to develop. Audrey Crombie says they could do movies like Downton Abbey. That's true. But the other thing, too, is that we could follow the girls into London as well. Or maybe to... No, there's no way that he would move out to where she's from. We could still have Hayrick Park, and maybe we'll move away from Sanditon and focus on Hayrick Park. But I think that Rose Williams is all done, so maybe we just focus on Augusta in town in London. Maybe she'll get married and we'll watch them play out somehow. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they're going to come. I think it would be a fun idea to continue into season 4 with different characters. I don't think they're going to do that. But I would love to see it. I just don't think it's going to happen. It's just kind of like a fun idea for me. Jupiter Crash says, I think Leo playing with military soldiers was because it was in her blood. She's Lennox's child for sure. And Jupiter Crash also says there was a portrait of Lucia Hayborn. She had brown eyes and looked like Augusta. I believe they made it very clear that Leo is Lennox's son or daughter because the hair, the color of eyes, the age, and the fact that Colburn very clearly believes it to be his, and if he did not sleep with her in that time and she came home pregnant, yeah, Lennox's daughter for sure. So I do believe that that's accurate. I don't think it's in her blood. I think that Lennox, I don't believe in that idea. I think that it's the product of your raising. I think she wanted to be, I think, when your parents or your father, you feel neglected by them, you try to be what you think they want you to be. And I think that Leonora thought maybe he doesn't like me because I'm a girl. If I'm more like a boy and, things available to boys, then we're military. And I think she kind of got caught up in the idea of leaving home and being a hero and getting the recognition from somewhere other than her father because her father was giving her none, maybe. Joy Fox said, what happened to Leonora's mother and father? Lennox is the father, biological father. Colburn is the father who's raising her, and Lucy died after a rainstorm. She'd walked out in a rainstorm. But I think Jay said, Joy, I think you mean Augusta's mom and dad, which is possible. Both died, I assume must have been from some type of accident. We are not given much more in season 2. Yeah, that's exactly it. I assumed it was from maybe a carriage accident or something like that where they were traveling and they both would have died at the same time because we're given the impression they died at the same time. So, and the last comment is from Joy Fox also. She says, there's a portrait of Lucy hanging in the foyer at Colburn's home. It was visible when Charlotte stopped at the table and took off her gloves when she visited the first time. In the portrait, she looked very much like Leonora. I'll have to watch it again, but again, I don't remember them saying any of that. Of course, if they intentionally made it to look just like Leonora or Augusta, I can see how they would be wanting us to believe it's Lucy. I don't think I got a good enough look at it to see or judge whether it was Lucy's mom or if it was Alexander's mom. I don't know. Especially since if his father was so abusive, maybe he kept things of his mom around because maybe his mom was living, but she died young. I don't know. We don't have enough information on his mom either. Unless that's something I'm missing as well, because I have not binge watched this like I have season 1. I don't know. So those were just some of the comments that we received on our YouTube page. I went through just all of our season 2 videos. I mean, there's a boatload more on our other videos, but I didn't go through them all. I know on our season 2 finale we had 72 comments and I only read a couple of them. So if you want to see what people have written on there or join the conversation there, by all means, go ahead and be on there. Just remember to be kind. There have been some rudeness. There's been some rudeness going on there. And, you know, people have their opinions. And it's totally okay. I think that it's good to have debates as long as they're kind and not attacking and rude. I think they're fine. And if you want to continue the conversation in our Facebook group, it's the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. I have not been as active in there as I would like to be in the past couple of months. Certainly not since I had my mastectomy. So I'm trying, I know I say this every podcast, but I am trying to get back into the swing of things. And I've got 2 podcasts I run. So I'm trying to get back into that. But we'd like you to come over there. And you guys can start conversations on that page too. Post YouTube videos as long as it's relevant to Sanditon, or post fanfiction as long as it's relevant to Sanditon. Even posting pictures or conversations that are related to Sanditon, we will approve them. So go ahead, go on over there and put those in. And next week, I believe we are going to be talking about Frasier. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in a week. Bye, guys.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.